We'll put down 10 and 11 this morning before everybody leaves. Spanish class will come up this afternoon at 12:30. Mitzvots. As always, we always start the day with the recitation of the first four, which are constant mitzvahs. That means the person is required to perform these mitzvahs every waking second of his life. You can either look at the book, or you can tell me what the mitzvahs are by heart, if you wish. One of the first four mitzvahs in the book, the four constant mitzvahs of the Torah. Anybody? Louder. Okay, love Hashem. Hashem is one. Fear Him and love Him. Actually, love comes first. We all talked about that. That really fear should come first, but fear really meaning respect. And you really can't love someone who you don't respect. If you honor God, respect God, and follow His wishes, and are careful to know what His wishes are, to the extent where you're knowledgeable about, you get married and you don't know what your spouse likes, or can help you very much. So since God is our spouse, He wants 613 stuff from us. We need to know what He wants. You might argue and say, well, He only wants today 271 in the book because there's so much that we're not doing. Okay, I agree with that. Nevertheless, we still need to know 271. We were required as students by my teacher, Rabbi Weinberg, to memorize all 613. And we did, in order, by the way. So in the order of the Rambam. And so therefore, we really need to be really vigilant to know these 271. Of the 271, the four constant mitzvahs in front are mitzvahs of belief in Hashem, Hashem's oneness, our relationship to Him in terms of fear and love. And the rest of the mitzvahs through 18 were daily mitzvahs we talked about. We talked about to sanctify Hashem's name is to present oneself in a way that reflects God's goodness in the world. To go in Hashem's ways means to go with ways of kindness, and as much as Hashem built the world upon kindness. Pray every day, tefillin every day, tzitzis every day, Shema every day, give some mezuzah every day, say grace after meals. Well, you want to say not every day because I'm not always eating bread all the time. So whatever else you read, say bracha. Learn Torah every day. Mitzvah 15, everyone should have a Torah, is to mean to go out and buy books. Homes will be filled with Jewish books. And opportunities for learning all the time. Number 16, to attach yourself to the Torah scholars. That means that every day you should go to the Rebbe. Of course, you might find that he might not answer all the time, and you might find that he maybe his message box is full or stuff like that. You keep on trying. Now it says over about regarding Shabbos, that you can't call. So if you're not living in the Rebbe's neighborhood, make sure whoever neighbor you are living in, you have a Rav there to speak to. And that's probably the reason why they set up in the services on Shabbos morning that the rabbis will always give a lecture and a speech on Shabbos for that reason. To give honor to the Torah scholar. And finally, number 18, to have reverence for the sanctuary means a person should have a connection with the shul every day of his life. He doesn't go to shul every day, which he ought to, which the women don't. So then at least there's a connection, there's a membership, it's a daily membership, a daily sense of Hashem's, of the holiness of the synagogue in our midst. And if we're in a neighborhood, we should contribute to the shul. Maybe have a pushka at home, which you put in a couple of dollars every day towards the upkeep of the shul. And the next mitzvahs are all about Shabbos and holidays. I do want to just focus on one thing about Shabbos. We're going to skip the holidays because we went out to mitzvah 38, which was stuck up. We did that last time. I want to talk about Shabbos in the following sense. Is this on? Looks strange. Okay, I want to talk about Shabbos in the sense that and if you paid attention to the reading of the parsha, is this thing on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. That's funny. Okay. In regard to the parsha yesterday, if you paid attention to the parsha, you will note that pay attention to the reading. Sometimes you pay attention to the reading, you look at really follow Hebrew. It's going to read nevertheless, you should dart your eyes from time to time to the English translation. So we have these articles, these commercials that we learned on Thursday. One of the interesting things in the parsha yesterday was the issue of the prohibition, the unfortunate incident of a person who violated Shabbos publicly. He was put to death. The violation of Shabbos publicly was a pretty bad thing, and then the scholars are disputing exactly. Scholars are disputing exactly what he did. Maybe he gathered the words together. Gathering could be a violation, one of the 39 forbidden labels of Shabbos, maybe he carried from one domain to another when he had those sticks of wood with him. Maybe he actually chopped them off the tree, maybe. Different opinions of what they are. Because the fact that there's different opinions indicates that there are many multiple ways of violating Shabbos. That there are 39. And you should know them by heart as well. It's a pretty tough place. Yeah, they're all these things, right? But then, of course, that's for your life. And any time people discuss an issue of, well, is this permissible on Shabbos or not? So the discussion has to center around, well, is it part of the 39 forbidden labels? If it's, driving the car forbidden on Shabbos. Yes. Why? Because it's a labor call. Fire. Okay. You gotta know what you're doing. You're gonna do it wrong. You just know what you're doing wrong. Right? The idea of let's say the prohibition of how do you deal with how do mommies deal with babies and diaper rash? How do you deal with that? Right. Because you're not allowed to smear on Shabbos. So it's a whole method of how to do it in a proper way. Point is that again, it's a sensitivity to getting it right because if you do it correct and do like you average do, then again you're violating Shabbos. And you got to know which violation is. That's the violation called smearing. Smearing is a major violation of Shabbos. But then again, one of the most major violations is carrying. Maybe he just simply picked up those sticks, the guy on the talking about the parsha, right? And he was carrying them from here to there. Now, if he carried them from here to there, that's not a problem because it's the same domain. And knowing the details. Details means you can carry 100 pounds of rocks up to the Empire State Building of 102 flights and come down again to New York City and not have a problem at all. I wouldn't suggest it, but it's not a violation of Shabbos. Take a hanky and walk out the door. You got a major violation of Shabbos. And when the Talmud begins to talk about the Shabbos and 39 labors, the first violation it talks about is carrying. The most simplest thing, carrying. They're removed from domain to domain. And the interesting thing about that is that we forget about it. Because we have this modern convenience called the neighbor. It's not modern, to be honest. The neighbor is, in fact, a law that allows for carrying. But the details are so intricate. There's 120 pages of Talmud on how to build an neighbor. What I can do is nothing about that. There's 120 pages of how to keep kosher and slaughter chicken. I got to learn that too. I go to the store and I buy what's kosher. I'm assuming that people have that anyway. But you can't assume nothing. What do? So the first thing you do is you go to a shop, which if it's supervised by, let's say, the RCC or rabbis, so you got nothing to worry about in kosher. You buy them with your eyes closed. When I was growing up as a boy, it wasn't that easy. There weren't always shops like that. that they had to carry exclusively kosher items. In fact, there were kosher stores, in fact, in those days, that carried some non-kosher items and had a sign, non-kosher, kosher. It's ridiculous when you think about it, but that's the way it was back in the infancy of our communities here in America. But what's interesting is that all the details that go into kashrus, dairy, meat, whatever it may be, are details that, in fact, well. Never know about these things. Nothing's foolproof in the world. There's one sure way to get rid of it. Thank you.
Just those roads.
Amazing. So, we have it, and kashrus made simplified. Anybody who can't keep kosher in today's day and age, I mean, maybe you're mentally inept. You keep kosher with your eyes closed. Now, carrying on Shabbos is a similar thing. Who gives a thought to it? Nobody. Well, can I carry anything that I want on Shabbos? Not necessarily. Even in the air, if I can't get it. Can't carry an umbrella, because that's a prohibition on Shabbos. What's the prohibition to use an umbrella on Shabbos? Anybody know the name of the thing I played yet? Oh, yeah. Building. The building. You just build yourself a tent. You can't carry an umbrella on Shabbos. What if it was open before Shabbat? That's a good question. It's open before Shabbat. Okay, so I got this open umbrella, right? And I'm going out in the neighborhood, right? And I'm walking 3 blocks home. Right? And guess what? Every 4 steps I took, I violated the building law. Because here's my house. It's a new house. It's a new house. Yeah. So I'm the mailbox, right? But what I really want to focus in on is how to perform the mitzvah of, or properly, of refraining from carrying on Shabbos, in which is an Eruv. And here's a simple, basic rule, which is an absolute must, which I bet nobody does. It's an absolute requirement for everybody to check the email or the hotline to determine if your Eruv is up. Or light, if it's light. Well, there's a light in the shul. And then most shuls have this light bulb over their signs, in which the light bulb is lit on Shabbos, you know the Eruv is up. Now, I know that in LA, we have really good weather like. In fact, we never have bad weather. So therefore, the likelihood of an Eruv going down is very, very good. But if you're in New York City and Friday morning there's a snowstorm, who's to say that one wire didn't fall down? And maybe there's a heavy hurricane, or maybe there's a lot of heavy winds today, 20 miles per hour wind, whatever. Maybe the wire went down over there, wire went down over there. How do we know? So we have a team of supervisors. And this team, well learned in the laws of Eruv. In fact, my son was one of them back in New York. They have a certain segment to check. Now, the Eruv could be, with us here, it's got to be at least 20 square miles. 20 that way, 20 that way, 20 this way, 20 that way. That's a large area to cover. Obviously, team leads, you can't have one person. You may be 3 or 4 or more than that. But they go do the checking, let's say Friday afternoon, anytime after 12 or 1 o'clock. Hopefully within the hour or 2, they can post it and let everyone know. But people really do have the requirement and the obligation to check. To assume that is not right. In other words, if you want to do your part in this mitzvah of refraining from carrying by using an Eruv, you have to do that checking. That's an obligation. And I think people need to understand that whatever services are provided for us, nevertheless, we have to do whatever part we have in terms of productivity. So the fact of the matter is carrying is a major, major violation. And so you ask the question, how does an Erev work and why do they do it? The Erev works very simply. We need to go into a private domain and realize that going out from the private to the public is a violation. A public to the private is a violation. And that's what they did in the desert when they built the Mishkan. One of the 39 things they did was they actually took stuff and they carried it from place to place. So let's assume that this guy who did it on Shabbos in the parsha yesterday, he did the same thing with one of the ingredients. So the sense of, let's say, joining two private domains together, let's say there's 10 private domains in this part of the apartment complex and 10 apartments in this private family apartments on this side. And there's a big atrium in between. Well, we all know that I can't go into your house, you can't go into one without permission. That's trespassing. Furthermore, we all know that we all can go into the atrium, we share the atrium. So the basic idea is if I travel from my house to the atrium, that's going from private to public. I go from the atrium to somebody else's house, or I go from my house to somebody else's house, also changing the domain, private to private, private to public, public to private. So therefore, what I can do is I can make one big enclosure. But the only way I can make the enclosure work is not just physically, I can build a erect fence, and I got a neighborhood. I got one big domain. But the problem is, it's still all different private. I still can't go into your house, you still go into mine. So private to private would be a violation as well. The answer is, it has to be agreed. People need to agree. And so people all in our 2010s in our complex agree we can make an end. But once we all agree that we're all one happy family, we also need to do what? We need to erect some sort of barrier which disconnects it from the outside, from the public. So therefore, we erect the fence. Now, erecting the fence and enclosure, that certainly signifies that this entire complex of 20 families is carried all over the place, you to me to you, and into the atrium. The enclosure, of course, enforces that physically. However, I don't need necessarily a full fence. I can have holes in the fence. We call them doors. So if I've got a wall here, you see at the end of the wall there's two doors. Those two doors open. I can keep it open all the time, and it's still a full wall enclosure. There's such a thing in Jewish law as accepting an opening as part of a wall. In fact, I can have the whole wall open for that matter. Once I have a post, and a top, which represents the door frame, and a top area can be open. So I put a post over there, and a wire on top, which we're all familiar with. And I've got myself around 4 signs of neighborhood. Everyone agrees, we all want to be together and happy and join each other. I'll bring wine to you at Shabbos, you bring wine to me at Shabbos. In the meantime, we all go to the area and each of you will go to this place. And it's enclosed, even though it's open, because we have a post on the top, post on top, post on top, post on top. I've got a neighbor. And I can do that around a large area. Here in Los Angeles, here in the valley, I can do it from the 118 freeway. 118, right? 118 freeway, which connects with the 5, and along the 5, connecting to the 170, 170 connecting to the 101, the 101 connecting to the 405, the 405 connecting to the 118. And I've got an 8. That means that's how far I can go. But if I'm, let's say, the 101 is the barrier here. If you live south of the 101, you're not in the area. So if you were to take a step, let's say, well, you live south of the area, don't you live over there?
I don't in Studio City, it goes that far.
And so you're on this side of 101?
I Mitzvah you see on Laurel Canyon, but they.
Are you on this side of the 101? There's the 101 right there.
Yes.
Oh, you're on this side of the 101, so you're good.
Yeah.
Right?
The city area doesn't cover that?
The city area does not. The city area, which I read about yesterday, is the largest, is one of the largest areas in the country. Now, it's the area. You wanna know what the city area is? Listen to this.
The 101, the 405.
No, that's not. Let me tell you the city. Wanna hear the city? You live in the city? I'll tell you about the city. Okay. The 10 freeway at Western. Everyone familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, going up, the 10 freeway and Western going up to the 101. Skirting the 101 all the way up to the 405. Anything east of that is out of the area. But anything west of Western and west of the 101 is part of the area. Correct? Now, that does not cover this place here, because it's skirting the 101. Now, I'm on this side of the 101. The area is on that side of the 101, the city area. The valley area is from the 101 this way. The city area is from the 101 that way. Right? So it's going up from the 10 freeway Western, all the way up to the 101, all the way to the 101 to the 405. At the 405, turns left, and it comes down and skirts the 405 this way, on Spola. Comes all the way down Spola, right, to, and skirting the 405 to the 10. And the 10 goes scooping right over. Right? The city area, the Los Angeles city area, is probably one of the largest areas in the country. We're in the valley a little bit, we're a little smaller than you guys. So we have a little area. But, and it doesn't cover, your area does not cover all this area, ours does. So can you go from one area to the other area? No, you go from one domain to the other. You can't do that, Charles. So you have to be a little bit up on top of things. I think the major issue with the Coach Yates, with the guy that did the Parsha yesterday, was the fact that the public and received the death penalty for it. Now you know the death penalty can never be administered in a Jewish court unless two factors are in place. What are the two factors? Right, two witnesses, and he was warned. And he warned about. I mean, threaten him. And he warned the guy, told him, don't do that. And he warned your kids. And he warned. So many say that there's an art to warning, because it's a mitzvah of Torah. And in fact, if you want to look at the book, you can find that the mitzvah of warning is found in mitzvah number, I gotta find it here. Mitzvah of warning is found over here. Actually, it doesn't list it separately. Oh, yes, it does. Mitzvah number 72. It's another 72. You shall warn a person who's doing the wrong thing. So of course, you're you see someone doing the wrong thing, maybe you know, if you don't know, you want to walk up to the guy, spoke straight and say, hey, you do something wrong. I'm not sure if that worked a whole lot. I mean, let's put it this way. Rule number one of being a warning is be effective. Be effective. If you know you're not going to be effective, there's no point. There's no mitzvah to warn someone you know he's not going to listen. Maybe it's issue too intricate for the person. Maybe the person not opening it about grade at that level. And different factors have to go into thinking about when to open your mouth, when not. You don't know the person well enough. Most commentaries want to connect this mitzvah number 72, to mitzvah number, I don't know why the Chofetz Chaim doesn't, but they want connected to mitzvah number 60. Anyone want to tell me what 60 is and why you connect 60 to 72? You do not have a book. What's your book? Oh, get 2 for the home.
You know what it is?
Is that 60?
60 is fair affection for everyone, including for myself.
Right, let me follow that. Right. So how does that connect with the embarrassment factor is not here. It is part of the mitzvah, but the reason it's not listed is because that's a negative, we're the positive. In the negative, thou shalt not embarrass. But let's leave that alone for a second. Just these two positives. Love your friend and warn him, scold him. Why is it connected?
Love your friend, you wouldn't want to see him do something.
Correct. If you really love somebody, you're gonna tell them you made a wrong turn, you should turn right now. Or something like that. Also, if you warn someone, but you don't really love them, you really think. You don't really care. Caring means that you, warning means that you care. And if you don't care, then you should think. There's no point. You don't even get it, right? There was one time that I actually, I'm pretty good at telling people off. I think I'm pretty good at that. I'm good at 72, but I'm good at 60. I love it. But one time I had a guy, it's an amazing story. I hadn't opened up my shul yet, and I was in a big shul in the valley. There was a lot of talking. And that's one of the reasons why I opened up my own shul. So I said, now shall we be quiet? Don't talk. I can talk. You love to talk. People walk in fashion, be late, and starts at 9, walk at 9:15. How you doing? Chance. It's the latest, how you doing? By 9:30, they'll up the shit. People are get very easily distracted. I'm talking a little bit in the shul, and I sit in the back. Keep myself out of trouble. And this guy sitting in front of me, one particular Shabbos, was just talking and talking and talking. Maybe even talking on Kedusha. It was just wild as it was. And finally, I tapped him on the shoulder. So I tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, why don't you shut up? What do you say? You heard me, shut up. Now that's a little, I'm not sure I'm telling anybody to do the same thing. I really blessed this guy. And it's always goals, you talk to me that way, so I sure did. Anyway, 3 years he didn't talk to me, he ate my guts. Now he likes me, I'm best friend. So the whole thing's worked out well. But the fact is that people should be warning. And if you're not warned effectively, you're not really, you're guilty, but you're not liable for punishment. The great Sephardic leader in Israel, Chacham Avad Yosef, said the following point. The only one who really ever knew how to give effective scolding was the prophet. Did I give a prophet? It just has no translation in English. The word prophecy means to predict the future. Can be prophetic, can tell what's going to happen. Because most of our prophets were prophets of doom. They said things are going to be destroyed, stop doing this over there, stop doing that over there, and so forth. But a prophet predicts. How do you know a prophet is a real legit and not a fake? If he predicts something that comes true. So do you have to wait? No. Very simple. Tell the prophet or ask the prophet, what's going to be tomorrow's weather? Now, if he's a weatherman like LA, it's real easy, right? Oh, clear skies. Real simple, right? But the reality is he's got to be able to tell you tomorrow's weather. If he can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow, I want to know which stock is going up tomorrow. Which stock is going down tomorrow. And you got to ask him right away to make sure that it's a prophet. And once his prophecy comes true, it's another. It's a prophet and story. And you have to listen to every word he says. It's a specific mitzvah of the Torah. It's not in this book. There's no prophets in today's world. But in the 613, there's a mitzvah A, to identify the prophet. B, to listen to the prophet. The prophet tells you to do it. So let's say the prophet doesn't keep Shabbos. Well, it's very easy. If I keep Shabbos, I can do minutes instead of 1. I can miss number 1, I kept Shabbos, miss number 2, I listen to the prophet. The point is that the prophet spoke to you in such a way which you really, really should really felt guilty, really felt overwhelmed by the prophet, by the presence of a holy man. Prophets who replete with a prophet coming to the lady and saying, come on, make sure you can have a baby. And make sure the baby will become a Nazarite, a Shushan or something. And so it happens. And the woman stands in front of the prophet and shakes him. I have to appreciate that this greatness we don't have to be. So if someone tells you to shut up, he's like, hey, I come with a great authority. And so therefore, it's most likely homeless. So make sure to get the kind of prophet that tells you that inspires you almost. Well, the fact of the matter is that we have nobody that can do that. It's the greatest book. So that's true. If no one can ever really give capable warning, no one's ever really liable to that battle. So there are all those unfortunate Jews that are out there driving cars, right? And they go and try to make them stop or whatever. I can't, because even if I try, I don't come with that kind of that art of being able to talk to a person properly that they know they had. So therefore, if the guy disobeys me, he doesn't really, this doesn't listen to me. He's not been warned adequately. If he's not been warned adequately, he can't be liable to the punishment of that. So therefore, today, in our world of ignorance, not evil, but ignorance, people violate the Shabbos can't be really held that guilty or culpable or punishable because they just don't know any better. And there's no one smart enough or capable of to tell them. So therefore, what do? We try to bring them closer, we try to open love, invite them to Shabbos, and try to do a Friday night meal, and do all we can to be inspiring. I once had a guy, almost early days back on the local shul called me and said, there's a new couple that wants to come and join us for Shabbos, and we'd like to send you for Friday night dinner. Would you like to have me? I said, sure. Inspire somebody. So the couple come, we have a great Friday night dinner, and the food's great, singing and all that good stuff. And then I say to them, let me show you where you'll be staying. This room is for you. Sleep tonight. And they say to me, oh no, we don't need to sleep tonight. We'll go home. I said, you know this stuff? You know this stuff. You know this stuff. You heard this? Anyway, so I say, well, really, great tell where you live. We live in Encino. Say that again? You are gonna walk through, I'm so stupid. I couldn't imagine a person in the car. I can't believe that a person is that's so my life. You're gonna walk, no, ma'am. Why do you have a car, Shabbos? So I yelled to my son, Chaim, steal his keys. True story. And I stood at the door. So the next 30 minutes, nothing the matter. And I'm begging, I'm pleading, I'm begging, don't cry, Shabbos. It's terrible, it's pleading, it's the worst thing, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. And after they left, on Shabbos, drove home. Didn't see the guy again for about 6 months. 6 months, I went into the guy. The guy says, guess what? I'm trying to Shabbos. I said, really? He said, oh, it's because of you. It's me. You didn't listen to me. He says, you're right, I didn't listen to you. But as I drove home that night on the freeway, I was so frightened every moment that I thought of what you said. I never drove again. 25 years later, I meet the guy. And he's in yeshiva, and he's learning to be a rabbi. So you never know how you get back the guy. But you're lucky because Hashem puts the right words in your mouth, But you got to learn how to do this because this is the effect of what happened to him when Goshen Shakes. This guy gathered wood yesterday's parsha, and there obviously was witnesses. Obviously, they warned them adequately, and he wouldn't do it anyway. So it's a terrible thing, and a violation of Shabbos, you know, it's a denial of Hashem, denial of God's creation. And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't exactly know what the punishment should be, which death. Finally, Hashem was created, he told him, and everyone should see it. Everyone should recognize that happened. Because what he did was public. His punishment was public. Point being is that we have to sense the same thing. Now, we're walking the shul on Shabbos. So you're walking down Chandler here in the valley, or Laurel Canyon, or you're walking down the Pico over there, right? The Holy Street of Pico, and the Holy Street of La Brea, right? And you're walking down these holy streets, that's it. And it's a massive amount of traffic. So of course you and your goodness say they're all going. It's not true. Now, I'm not sure that's true, but you know, but the hope they're all going. But the fact is that seeing a violation of Shabbos affects you, so to speak. And so therefore, vigilancy in terms of our own keeping of Shabbos also includes the vigilancy of recognizing that we should be a factor for others to try to get them to keep Shabbos. And in this effort to try and do so, we are need to be as skilled as possible. We can't be as skilled as another, and we can't be as skilled as the great rabbis. But we have to do the best we can within the scope of our understanding, so that we can try to spread the message of Shabbos. And that's the message of the Parsha. The message of the Parsha is: see the guy violates Shabbos. It's a horrible thing, horrible death and results on it. It needs to be understood that it's really something intolerable. What would be the story if you walk down, let's say downtown LA? We once had a chassan. I mean, hello, that's going downtown LA. That you're going to work maybe. But otherwise, we had a wedding in some hall downtown. The stupidest hall. I don't want to couple pictures. But anyway, we went to this wedding. Didn't listen. Anyway, so the couple went to this wedding, and we walked out of the street for the wedding hall, and then we dragged the society on the floor. So, this drunk, that drug addict, this bum, that bad guy. And of course, we make fun of it, but it really is so sad. And it really is almost like a point to look at. You don't even want to see or visualize the deterioration of human beings. We have to feel the same way when we see someone on ourselves. The deterioration of the person. There are parents in certain sections and neighborhoods of Shalim that make sure on Shabbos they never walk out of their neighborhood. They shouldn't see someone driving on Shabbos. Children should not see or be exposed to someone who would violate Shabbos. See a store open, heaven forbid. That's the kind of sense of what took place in the parsha in regard to the violation of Shabbos, meaning that the violation is bad enough. The violation on a public level is appalling. That's what I mentioned that today, and of course reinforce the point of what is the one of the 39 labors, which is the labor of carrying. So remember, we all are benefits of the Eruv, and I guess in a way. We did the air because we're all great. I didn't do an air because I'm one big happy family, not of an apartment complex where everybody knows each other, but of an entire neighborhood like ours or LA. The answer is you go to the Chamber of Commerce and whoever the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and you speak to him. One of our representatives goes and says, "Hi, we have this religious issue about carrying on Shabbos, and we have what we do is erect these poles and wires and so forth. And would you mind representing everybody else to agree that we're all we want to have a family?" Well, sure, why not? And then he got his agreement. He got everybody's agreement as his being representative. You got there connecting everybody with their own care. The idea of carrying, as I say, being such a serious violation, one of the reasons the rabbis did this Eruv deal is in order to prevent people from carrying on Shabbos. Loads of people did. Yes. And the ways they did it were interesting. Okay, we got to carry a hanky. Maybe a woman carries a little hanky in her purse or whatever. No one's carrying car keys or money and stuff like that. But it's still a major violation. I slice it, right? And bigger people maybe carry their prayer book or whatever it is. But the real issues became issues of, let's say, a mother wanted to go to shul, but couldn't because she has a baby that can't walk, and she had to push a stroller. Pushing the stroller is heavy. Another, that's you. Another person's a shut-in. Maybe the person can't walk, an elderly person wants to go to shul, but needs someone to push him in a wheelchair. And the air facilitated all of this. So in a way, this convenience really was motivated more by helping people in the community more than just providing convenience for us. And so I, as a matter of rule, do not carry a meal. Now that's because I'm super duper pro. That's not true. Why don't I carry an neighbor? It's 100% legitimate. Anybody and everybody can carry. Why don't I? The answer is because I want to be the person who reminds people that there once was a prohibition of carrying. There once was such a thing, and it still exists on the books. It's not for neighbors. And if you go to a town somewhere in Montana or Nebraska and spend a Shabbos there, remember, there's no air around. How many people make a mistake and forget about the fact that it's not LA when they want some sort of vacation in Palm Springs? And they're all down, oh my God, Karen. Who thinks about it? People don't think. And people make mistakes simply because they're used to the convenience. It used to be when you slaughtered a chicken, and the shusher could slaughter it, no train is supposed to and everybody can do it. And then, first, there was a very important mitzvah to make the chicken kosher, or the meat for that matter. What's that mitzvah called? Pizza. Say it again? Pizza. Oh, you treat the guy, the guy did it, right? Here's the shusher. I'm gonna say it's every kippur. So you want to go every kippur to throw the chickens, right? Before they put the kippur, we all throw the chickens, right? Kabaras. Anyway, so then you watch him. He said he twirled it first, and then he slaughters it, and it's kosher chicken. And if he makes a mistake, let's say, so he's got two bins. This bin's kosher, this bin's Farmer John, right? No good, no good, right? Okay, so now, what is the next step once the chicken has been slaughtered? Salted. Say it again. Salted. Salted. It's called melicha. Melicha is a lost art. It was one of the most important lessons that every young girl learned by her mother. How to kosher chickens. So particularly salted. The whole process. Would you believe that one of the three major categories that a rabbi has to learn in order to get smicha is the law of salt, which he'll never do. I shouldn't say that. I once did it. I had a job, a part-time job, and I needed some money. So I went to a slaughterhouse and I did not slaughtering, but the salt. You have to learn how to do it. It's a specific art. It's specifically trained in shulchan aruch. Rabbis have to learn it to be able to supervise it to make sure you have kosher chicken, because it's forbidden to eat. Forbidden to eat. What?
Isn't there another thing with the lungs?
No, so the idea, first of all, there's no problem with chicken.
Right, I'm saying.
But a meat that'd be a problem, and generally that's a chicken called chicken for glat. But nowadays everybody does it. Used to be, in the old days, there was glat and non-glat. Today everything's glat. Glat to simplify matters. Everything's so consumer ready, so it's so consumer convenient today. It's a different Judaism. I grew up with it. Obviously, it's a different level of consciousness, or maybe the lack of consciousness today. Our heightened level of observance is our decreased level of consciousness. Amazing. Think about that. Good point. Good. Just thought of that. Anyway, yeah.
You know, Africa and Tunisia, we always did that from.
Yeah, the whole time. Every young girl's lesson. How does a young girl learn her role in Judaism? From her mother. There was no schools. What did her mother teach her? They taught her about sneeze, modesty. So they taught her about kosher, keeping the home kosher. They taught her about family purity and the mikvah. These are things that were domain of the domain of the woman, which could only train mother to daughter. Really. And koshering a chicken was elementary. Everybody did that. And so that's why I'm saying that these are all these conveniences that have come today. There it was a convenience. But it was promoted because what it did is it minimized mistakes. It minimized ignorance. Even if people don't know, so they say keeping Shabbos, what they know, what they don't know. It's just always like just facilitating and being there on a communal level for people. But I think at the end of the day, the idea is for us to learn how the importance of Shabbos is, and particularly focusing on one singular thing called the prohibition of carrying. The Talmud, the Gemara on Shabbos, begins with the discussion of carrying as the first of all things to discuss in terms of keeping Shabbos. Okay, in any event, we'll skip the holidays. We did Stucco, which was number 38 last week. And part of Stucco is mitzvahs 39 and 40. 39 and 40 says, keep your word. We'll talk about people talking excessively. A lot of people don't talk during davening, they say Lashon Hara, but they also do something worse than that. They talk about nothingness and sometimes run off at the mouth in terms of promises that they either cannot keep or won't keep or intend to keep, but aren't able to do it completely. And we know from the lesson 39, there's a mitzvah of the Torah to fulfill every word you say. It's a passage in Devarim, chapter 23, verse 24. Motzas vasecha kishmor, whatever comes out of your mouth shall be observed and watched carefully. And vasisa lashonadarta, and do exactly what you pledge. And it says further in Bamidbar, everything that comes out of your mouth you got to do. It's a mitzvah of male and female, and it's at all times and in every place in the world. So the idea of keeping your word is, of course, a very great challenge. Because it's a great challenge, so we learn another convenience. To use an app. The app is to employ our friend Billy. I introduced you to Billy last week. And who's Billy? Billy Naylor. Billy Naylor is a very, very convenient fellow. He's there to help us break our promises. That's me. We're living in the human condition, folks, and we have to know exactly what our capabilities are and our frailties. We have to try all we can to keep our word. So that means in general, but when we ever make a specific neder, a specific pledge, and that's one at the mouth, but it's rather thought out and decided properly, we have to do what we say. No different than we do any other mitzvah in the Torah. Now, with the mitzvah of the Torah, it says, don't eat pork. Okay, good. I don't eat pork. Now, I take upon myself a vow, I'm not going to drink wine for 30 days. And then that's what I vow. The wine becomes pork. You drink the wine, you violate the prohibited food. You eat pork, you violate the prohibited food. One is imposed upon you by God, one is imposed upon you by yourself. But you got that power. That's the idea. The human being has the power to impose it. Why? What power does the human being have? It's the power of speech. So, how many people heard the story about the funeral? Everybody? You know what the funeral? Okay, let's go to the funeral. Walking down the street, down the main street, town square. Who knows? You know it? You've been to a funeral? How many people been to that funeral? Okay, well, maybe you remember. I get to the point. And we're walking down the street, and right down there in the middle of town square, there's this big coffin, and there's a rabbi there, and he's standing by himself, and he's wailing and crying and eulogizing the loved one that just lost. And of course, you know, mitzvah is if you walk by and you see people going, you have to stop for a few minutes and join. So we stopped for a few minutes and we joined. And we were really curious, like, who was this guy? Must have been a big soccer or something. Wailing, screaming, and yelling, oh, what a wonderful one. Oh, we miss him so much. Oh, he never said Lashon Hara. Oh, he never embarrassed anybody. Oh, he never cursed. Oh, he never raised his voice. And on and on and on. Sorry. By this time, 200 people a day. Nobody calls it. And every word was right. He never spoke Lashon Hara. He never embarrassed anybody. He never spoke in shul. He never spoke to hurt anybody's feelings. And on and on. Because the animal, you see, cannot harm. You can't do good either. But we have the power to communicate, to daven, and to use our mouth on the living. We also have the same power negatively. Any power that a person gets, any particular talent the person has, he can unleash it for good or unleash it for bad. So the mouth has to know on a positive level, if you do take them out, you gotta take it seriously and you gotta keep it. So we talked about a couple that came to me, maybe after 3 years in Eretz Israel, they learned, they just got married, had a couple kids, and they're living in Eretz Israel, learning it, and now to come back to America to get a job. And in Israel, they kept this special stringency of kosher called Cholav Yisrael, the extra specially supervised. Now in America, you don't have to do that. Moshe Feinstein clearly said that the USDA rules are so strong that nobody's gonna break, no farmer's gonna break those rules. And therefore you can guarantee that milk is cow's milk, you can guarantee that's kosher. In other countries, not so. We went to France for a week. Unless we got a call, we couldn't drink milk. So it was pig's milk, I didn't know. But in America, it's pretty back.
So here you don't have to drink.
No, you don't have to. But some people want to do it anyway. So they said, we've been doing it for 3 years over there, but now it's getting too difficult because it's over here. Now today it wasn't really available in those days like it is today. So what do we do? So I said to them, you can change, but not without a noble vow. You got a vow. In other words, it's not the issue of the milk that's important here. The issue that you undertook it. And undertaking, you didn't undertake it verbally, but you undertook it in practice for 3 years. That's a vow. You can't stop that. Unless you go and formally go to Beit Din, and the Beit Din will hear your story and allow you to annul the vow as per the power of a 3-rabbi Beit Din. Doesn't have 3 rabbis, three Shomer Shabbos people. Point is that the issue again is the way of the humanity of our Torah is such that if you do take a vow, there is an out, and that out is called the number of the vows. The interesting thing about the number of the vows is that it's done on a general level every Erev Rosh Hashanah. I don't know how many vows I took, I didn't take. I don't know how many times I shook hands, or how many times I promised, or whatever it is, or whatever I said. But just in case, I'm in front of 3 people, everybody does an annulment on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And then there's a formal one on the night of Yom Kippur. And it's called, what's it called? The night of Yom Kippur. It's called? Oh my God. And why would you think that the holiest day of the year would start and be inaugurated with the sin or the concern, the violation of the sin of vows? Because we're just ready, on the day of Yom Kippur, of our entire body, what is the organ that will be used the most? Not all day. All day, not I'm going to use your mouth. So you're going to say, Hashem, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this and that. I'm going to be better for that. And your mind looks at you and says, why should I believe the word you say? You did this last year. And you have and all this past year, you've been promising and not keeping your promise. I saw that you broke that netter over there, you broke that netter over there. I saw that. So why would I want to believe what you have to say? So therefore, in order to challenge that situation, scenario, what we do is we cleanse our mouths just before Yom Kippur begins and make sure that all the vows are known. So there's no such thing as a broken vow hanging over my shoulders anymore. And because of that, your mind says, well, your mouth's clean now. So maybe you should trust it. And that's why you get the praise. You open up the free people service with prayer, with the annulment of vows. I didn't know the vows. Again, I bet didn't pray. So what happens? One rabbi goes up to the Torah. The other rabbi, the other Torah. And they stand on the side of the chazan. And the 3 of them become And he begins to say the words of the nomen and the vows. And the vows were no. And now we can begin your gift service. And our mouths are not held responsible for what we said. It's an amazing thing how the Torah teaches this obligation, this responsibility, and at the same time provides an out in terms of understanding our own humanity and our own mistakes. And you gotta be so grateful to Hashem for creating us not only with His gift and His power, but at the same time with the forgiveness of understanding that we make mistakes. So one day I insulted you. One day I said bad about you. I said lashon hara about you. I said this, I said that. One day I said something to your spouse. I'm sorry I said. So and figure that out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut it all the time. You gotta really try to know what you said and realize by knowing that there is an unknown factor and you can cleanse what you said. Therefore, you're more careful the next time and learning more about how you can indeed be in control of what you say. So these mitzvahs are very important, 39 and 40. 39 says, keep your word. 40 says, you can know it if you have to. Says the Torah in Bamidbar chapter 30, verse 3. If you are sorry that you made the vow, you regret it, you're sorry for what has happened, you made a mistake, you ran off the mouth, you promised too quickly, come to an expert scholar or 3 ordinary persons, if there's no learned expert, 1 learned expert to do it, by the way, and say, I swore or vowed this and that. You have to specify the vow. Yom Kippur, you don't, because there's too many of them. Or Shani, you don't, there's too many. But in a specific situation where you're keeping the extra trinity of milk and you want to be able to make that change, you got to specify that to the Bezdin. I regret it. I don't regret doing it. I regret that I didn't say Billy Neder when I did it. That's what I regret. I was happy I can't follow this road for 3 years. I should have, in retrospect, thought to say no. So we joke around with Billy, but it's a big name, it's a big word. It's something that people should, I know people use it, not in fruit, they use it 10 times a day. Yeah. I'll be there, I'll do it later, you know? And that kind of behavior is the kind of behavior that just gets you into the habit of being careful in what to say. And he says, I have sworn such and such or promised such and such, I regret it. I don't regret that I did it. I regret that I didn't say bli neder. Had I known that I would suffer about the matter to such an extent, or that this would happen to me, I would not have taken the vow of the oath. The scholar or the 3 ordinary men tell him, have you already been sorry for it? Whereupon he says, yes. At that point, they say to him, mutalach, mochulach, it is permitted to you, and sharilach is permissible, and you are forgiven. And this is the idea of the concept of keeping word, which is listed here by the Chavetz Chaim next to the mitzvah of tzedakah. Why? Why do we put the mitzvah of neder next to the mitzvah of tzedakah? Because people make pledges of tzedakah. That's a wonderful thing. And maybe it's an appeal. Maybe pledges, no, they're dying. It's tzedakah. So they say, I'll pledge $25, I'll pledge $50. Everybody was on pledging, right? And you have to be careful. Make sure that you're pledging reasonably. Don't pledge beyond your means. Is it valuable to pledge? Yes, it is. But you shouldn't, because you get yourself in trouble. Answer, say we know. I promise that I will donate to the shul this year $500. Mid-year, I'm paying out $50 a month. Mid-year, I have a crisis. It happens. So if I didn't say bli neder, I'm in a lot of trouble. Not because of the mitzvah stuck, but because of the mitzvah you upset that I'm not doing my word. So they'll be getting a more bad day once again. Point is that always be careful in every sort of way with the words we say, the things we promise, so that we recognize that our capability may be now. I said we can make something happen in 6 months, the capability wouldn't be there. And so we always have to be careful to say we never, particularly with regards to tzedakah. But is it valuable to make some sort of initial pledge to that? Absolutely. But make sure the pledge is b'lineder. And therefore, if you make the pledge, what's the value of that? B'lineder. The answer is it'll keep you vigilant. It'll make sure, you'll make sure that send that $50 every month. And having made the pledge, it's sort of written down somewhere. It's serious. It's not stuff anymore. It's an obligation. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's why these mitzvahs put together. The next mitzvah, mitzvah 41, is the mitzvah of honoring parents. I'm going to skip that mitzvah and go on to 42, which is to respect parents.
Now, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
How is building an era not revising the Torah? There's no pairing, there's no pairing.
Okay, great question. I'll answer it in 5 minutes. Okay, hang on, great question. I should have mentioned it. I lose my train of thought. Anyway, I'm skipping 41 and 42. I'm going on to 43. Anybody want to tell me why?
Respecting your parents is,
No, look at 43. What's 43? Which means get married, have children. And then, of course, the children will respect you. But you got to respect your parents first. But I think in terms of understanding the roots of honoring parents, obviously comes first in our lifetime as being children, and even adult children for that matter. Still, the reason there are children in the first place to respect their parents is because their parents decided to get married. And then what's the mitzvah to get married? That's 43. 44 is exactly the procedure of how to get married. And we're not going to do that today. But I want to look at the difference between 43 and 44. What is the difference between marrying a wife by the ceremony of Kiddushin and the difference of marrying a wife in order to be fruitful and multiply? What's the difference between 43 and 44? The difference is very simple. One is marriage, the other is children. I know they're hand in hand. I know they work together. And I know obviously that's what it's all about. Obviously, but I think what we need to learn is that marriage is a family building experience. When God told Adam, you shouldn't be alone in the world. It meant to say that if this guy's a bachelor, it's not lady, it's not married, and 25, 35, 35, 45, 45, whatever it may be. Being alone in the world is not the right thing. God said that way back in the beginning of Adam. You have to have that. Having the companion gives you what? Gives you that sense of family. Now, really, having that sense of family indicates even if your children aren't just yet, you're still family. If you're not one, you're two. Obviously, the ultimate goal of that family, the ultimate goal of that building with a companion is to have children. It is the mitzvah of having children, is the mitzvah that is the very first mitzvah of Peru. One might argue that the reason we have such a mitzvah, and God gave it to other mitzvahs, because of a mitzvah number. It's number 6. What's mitzvah number 6? Amen. So you look. You didn't get it? I didn't. Oh, my fault. Okay, mitzvah number 6. How about it? Walk in the ways of God, emulating God. My grandma used to say, how would you like to be God? I would like to be God, but it's some experience. Like, wow, run the world, amazing. As a parent, you create. What is God? God's a creator. What's creation? The ultimate act of human kindness. The ultimate act of God's kindness. We're created as creatures of God to be emulating Him. We can do what He does. to the limited extent. But if God creates, He can win. And the child is that experience. And so the idea, of course, brings us to the understanding, of course, that women are far more intertwined with this mitzvah than men. The men can just stand around, the best they can do. And the woman is the hero of this mitzvah. And funny thing that women are not obligated to mitzvah. Men are. The reason they're not obligated is because Hashem doesn't obligate you to do what's obviously self-understood. The Torah can't tell you what you don't know. I already know. Men don't know that. Women do. Women know it intrinsically, instinctively. So therefore, women are not obligated to mitzvah. Men, don't you run away. Stay and have those kids. What's made to have kids? So it means, of course, there is obviously a receiving the husband and wife. So that's a good start. Obviously, going to mikvah, purity. But then, with conception, and a woman can't be a child for 9 months, you have this beautiful experience of new life. Then the delivery, which is the ultimate experience of it was as a spectator. And brings life into the world. And that's not where the mitzvah ends. That's where the mitzvah begins. Once told my mother, she said, Mom, greatest mitzvah you ever did had me. I said, anybody got a baby? I said, yeah, my who could have woke me up? Only you could have handled me. Bringing them up, raising them, feeding them, nourishing them, comforting them, guiding them, giving them Torah, watching them grow in fruition to the beauty of the new life that they're going to lead to go to school first grade. But we having this Torah, watching putting words together. You know, everyone who went, I was telling my students, look, can you read that? Can you read that? Can you read that? Fascinating. One of the child forward to the environment in the classmates, moving forward in their lives, becoming the best person they can be because of your instruction, your guidance, your this mitzvah is exactly yes, God does give us independence. We got to do that for our kids too. But God pretty much is intervening in our lives. He's telling us what to do. Do that mitzvah, that's 6:13. Don't forget what you're supposed to do. Travel far away, you forget about God or something. And then you can't travel very far, forget about Hashem anything. No matter how far you go. You gotta know what Hashem will do, and you're obligated to do it. Well, I'm on vacation now. Do I have to keep all the mitzvahs? I mean, yeah, I don't care. So what? You gotta nominate everyone. We're on vacation, so let's look at the shops. Right? The idea is that Hashem is in position in your life, is constantly there as a loving parent. Loving parents direct their children, care about their children. I once gave my son an 8-year-old a big smack in the mouth. It's also mitzvah. Because he crossed the street against the red light. Other time, the same thing. My son, he got the brother of my punishments. I took this, I mentioned the other day, in the 5th grade, he stole something from one of his kids, and then he stole something from one of his classmates. It's like I'm home that day in the evening, and I'm looking on this desk over there, and I said, where'd you get that? I said, put him in the car, go over to the person, and I said, go give it back. Point is that first way you have to have it. So the only way to start having it is you do have it. That is an important part of it. It just don't go along. Which of course is a big lesson for us in terms of emulating Hashem. Hashem creates, we want to create. Have a little difference. Hashem can do it all by himself. One is Hashem. Hashem Echad. Everything else, us, we need to is and to be able to bring life in the world. So the whole idea is that this mitzvah of marriage really is almost an auxiliary mitzvah to the basic mitzvah, which is have children. However, after we discuss that mitzvah, I got you. I know what your parents were brought you up in the world. Oh, yeah. The fact of the matter is that the mitzvah of marriage is treated on an independent level in the next mitzvah. And that's what we learn about how marriage ceremony works, how it develops, what we do. That go to Cleveland, get married. Point is that that's a separate mitzvah, but it's also considered an auxiliary mitzvah or a prep mitzvah to the next mitzvah, which is to have children. And he lists of the time lists children first as your goal, because you want to build a family. That's what. Now, of course, Rebbe used to say, every child is an adventure in love, and we Jews love adventures. So therefore, we have many of them. Point is that this mitzvah of having children is the emulation of Hashem. So what are we talking about emulation of Hashem? We're talking about a mitzvah since we said, oh, Hashem is kind, you gotta be kind. Hashem is merciful, you gotta be merciful. Hashem is gracious, you gotta be gracious. Hashem is loving, you gotta be loving. All the good kindnesses that we do in the world are all an emulation of Hashem, all of them fulfilled with the mitzvah number 6. And so is the mitzvah of having children. Even though it's separate mitzvah. Still, that separate mitzvah is nevertheless a continued emulation of Hashem. And saying, I am following his ways and doing what he created me for. So at the end of the day, you can be a lawyer, an attorney, an accountant, or a barber student, or a rabbi. The ultimate goal is to become husband, wife, mother, and to train children, giving back to the mitzvah of kibbut al-ba'in, honoring parents, which is mitzvah number 40. So we're going to take a look at mitzvah number 40 and then, tomorrow, next Sunday. Mitzvah 41, sorry. Mitzvah 41, the mitzvah of honoring parents. We'll go back again and review the mitzvah of having children. Let's take a real quick look at it. Mitzvah number 43. The Torah says in Prohibition, God said to the Torah, to be fruitful and multiply. But you might ask this question: is this a mitzvah exclusively upon Jews? Or the Chava weren't Jewish. He gave the mitzvah to them. That means the mitzvah for humanity. That means that how many mitzvahs do the non-Jewish world have anyway? 7. Now 1. So this requires a lot of introspection and thinking. How come God gives this mitzvah to human beings at large, on the Chava, and it's not listed amongst the 7 mitzvahs of the life, the 7 mitzvahs of humanity, and it's only exclusively a mitzvah for us. Very strange. We have to figure that out. There's nothing else. But we have to figure out why this mitzvah is in fact applicable to human beings, because all the guys out there having children go. They must do something right. There's a difference between having it and having it. There's a difference in the Jewish way and the non-Jewish way. But it does apply to humanity, and it is universal. That's what I want to say. So this mitzvah, of course, is an obligation, says the Chavetz Chaim, by the time you're 18 years old. Well, if you've passed 18, you've been neglecting the mitzvah. That means when you're 13 and you're obligated in all the mitzvahs, you're not obligated in this one. Why not? Because you're not ready yet for it. So even though you're obligated the full 613, certain things are applicable at certain times. If you're 13 and 18, the mitzvah of having children is not applicable. 18, we assume you have a certain level of maturity. Now, the Moshe Feinstein was asked a question about today's deterioration of generation, and he responded and said, today's 18 is 22. And anything over 22, guy can't die sure of their own truths. So he's not capable of getting married. Of course, nowadays,
So
that's
the 13 is 15?
What?
So the 13 is 15?
No. That's not true. But You could argue that, but we have a specification that says not that way. But I'll tell you something else about that. Since you've been bringing it up. Some say that even though a boy at bar mitzvah 13 or a girl at bat mitzvah 12, their obligations are enforced, but they're not liable for punishment if they mess it up until they're 20. And it's a very interesting discussion on that. Not for now, but it's a amazing discussion. So it's a good point to go. Anyway, this is what he wants to say, and he says that you got to start thinking seriously about this here. It past the age of 20, without getting married, he transgresses every day that you're not married after 20. You're violating the Torah. Whoa, you're in trouble here. However, if you're occupied in Torah study and you're learning in yeshiva, and he fears that the problem of having a lot, making a lot, earning a livelihood will interfere with his learning, he's permitted to delay. But in any event, not beyond the age of 25. So those of you that are contemplating should get going. We'll talk more about that at the same also next week. Your question about the area. What was the question? How did the rabbis do it?
How is it not considered revising?
Revising the Torah. So basically, let's understand something. We have 7 mitzvahs that are on. One of them is called an area. Why is it not revising the Torah? Torah says you can't carry it. All of a sudden you make up this legal fiction, and you which is not a fiction, but it's a legal maneuver, shall we say, that allows you to carry. The answer is very simple. The prohibition of carry on Shabbos has to be in a similar manner the way it was done in the desert, like any other of the 39 labors. Correct? Let's say, let's define professionally. We use the word professional. The Hebrew, the Torah use the word machshava, for professional. How do you professionally carry? The answer is you remove an item from one domain, and you bring it over and put it down in the next domain. So let's say you're in this domain and you hand this to me, right? You removed it, I have it. You did half the job. I now put it down, I did the other half of the job, or vice versa. Either way, it is not a prohibition of the Torah. Because the job has to be done similar to the way it was done in the construction of the Mishkan in the desert. That's how we get the 39 labors. Not only how they are, but how they're performed. The way they did it then in the same manner. Carrying is prohibited from public to private. So the question is, what's defining the public? So the rabbis understood that defining a public domain would be where there's a minimum of 600,000 Jews all together. As they were at the time, there were 600,000 Jews at the camp. From much more first, there was only the males, the females only much more. And altogether, maybe there's a whole catchment of at least close to 5 million people. In any event, at least that 600,000 males have to be in one area, then that's called public. So if you take it out from the inside of the sanctuary out to the public area, 600,000 Jews, you violate it. Where do you find a conglomeration of 600,000 Jews? So you might argue, maybe Rosh Boulevard, you take Rosh from there to there, but they have to be walking. So let's say all over Rosh downtown, Santa Monica, you've got 600,000, right? Maybe that might be considered a public area. How about Ventura Boulevard? From here, all the way out to Ventura. How many people are walking down that street at one given time? That would be a total of 600,000. If you got that, then you have what is known as a public domain, and you cannot do that. Can't do it because you say you can't revise it. But if it's less than 600,000, it's not called a public domain anymore. You know what it's called? It's called the kindness. I'm not sure how to define kindness, but it's like a little what? The courtyard. Like a courtyard, right? That's interesting. Courtyard. And the courtyard, let's say at home there's 5, 6 people, 8 people, how many the big family is. But in the middle of the courtyard, there's everybody wants to conglomerate and eating together. So this courtyard can have 20 people, 80 people, 200 people, 500 people. It's not a public domain, according to the definition of the way it was then. There was 600,000. So let's have 600,000 going down one street. If it goes down this one street, then all of the streets opening to it become part of that public domain. So it's all it's a Ventura, and everything becomes public in that. But we really don't have it. We might have it. Manhattan, 42nd Street, Fourth Way. That's pretty much, you buy 600,000, maybe within a radius of 20 blocks. Especially at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Some say even Manhattan, even midnight. City doesn't have sleeps. Point is that it is not an actual public place. So why is it forbidden openly? It's an area. The answer is it's forbidden in time public. The rabbis made a ruling that said, even if it's not the public domain the way it once was, anything similar to that, we, rabbis, will brand it. So the same provision that the rabbis make, they can also make an alternative way of fixing the situation. It's within their domain now. So if I have a rabbinical law, we've talked about this many times, rabbinical laws can be suspended, let's say, the person not well. So you know that, let's say I have a headache, I'm going to poor. I can't violate the Torah Shabbat because I have a headache. Right? I mean, dangerous. But if it's a rabbinical violation on Shabbat, I can violate that because the rabbis themselves said we do not impose rules in these limits. This is their own rules. So a person has this migraine, temperature, not dying. Can you cook up for him a hot soup or hot in Shabbat? No. Can you ask a non-Jew, which is a rabbinical prohibition, to do that? The answer is yes. That's when you get the possession of where there's a rabbinic law, there's a rabbinic fixing or helping you to modify it because it's their own law. They make it, and they can therefore tell you when it applies and when it doesn't apply. Get it? That's how the air works. Okay, thank you all for coming. Have a great week. Hope you all signed in. If you haven't, there's a sign-in sheet somewhere. Please hand me that sign-in sheet if you can. And we'll see you next week. Make sure you buy books. You have books. You need to have books. Yeah. You're welcome. See you Thursday. God willing. Oh, yes. Beautiful. Whoa, good one.
Thanks, Dave. Right there. Yeah. Rabbi Stern.
I promise you, I'll let you.
Leave it. Yeah, leave it.
But that's it.
Please, please.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, still doing this thing. Yeah. I see, yeah, very nice. Good to see you.
Share this stuff. Right, it's very confusing. No, I know, but I'm just saying. Well, you're right, I mean, why are we doing it? Right. You gotta hold this and hold this to figure out why he did what he did, how. It's very. Oh.
Do you like your channel? Now I work with small business and I feel like I'm not working in a review. I wanted to be clear, so like,
No.
I'm not.
Well,
Oh, good.
I'm doing the night.
Can I ask you?
By us?
I'm serious. I'm just. I mean, I do it. So, and then you cover it in like so you get like triple holidays, all that.
What's going on? Wow.
My God, this way. Next week. Okay.
Fun.
Bye, have
Have
fun.
fun.
Really?
Yes. That's a red flag.
I said,
Yeah.
you're right.
You need order, here's your order.
Do you want to read it?
Even the cheeks, you know, sometimes, and I get a rush from everything.
I didn't buy a ticket because I forgot about it. I know it's good.
I have some keep going, man. Like
I decided all for Mitzvots.
oh, yeah, I didn't see the.
Yeah. But I didn't have to take it off. No, I know, but I know. We're waiting on you that night. I'm sorry. Okay, listen. I go like to use something that I need for the next batch. Okay, so we're going to yes. What is it for? Just explain here. Yeah, I have 10 minutes. Let me end this. Leave it